Hello and welcome to Hunt Wild Live Well. Today I'm going to be using a meter to determine how much power my Cpap actually uses. You could of course get a power rating off of the charger, but that includes using your dehumidifier, which the heat that it creates is one of the biggest power consumers in your machine. So if you're looking at putting something together to run off of a battery for camping, you're best off if you can disconnect or turn off that humidifier. So I'll go ahead and fire it up and we can see how much power it's using. Okay, so there's a pretty big variance there, but in general, like on the in-breath, the highest it got was about 25 AC watts, and on the out-breath, it got down as low as 4, mostly around 5. I would say, I think I'm going to estimate this at about 12 AC watts, just on average, in terms of the in and the out. I don't know if you can see it as well. It's at 3 right now, but normally I've noticed there is also a parasitic draw of about 1.5 AC watts, and I left it on for about an hour before I shot this video just to see, and it stayed on. So I'm going to make sure that I unplug it when I'm using it so it's not slowly draining the battery. So now that we know we're looking at about 12 AC watts to run this machine, the formula we want to use is to convert it into DC amps, which is what we'll need for the battery. So the formula is AC watts divided by 12 equals DC amps. So in our case, part of the reason I estimated it to 12 is that's easy math. It's 1, right? If your meter gives you AC amps, the formula you'll need is AC amps times 10 equals DC amps. So now that we have that DC amp number, the next thing we need to do is to convert it into amp hours. So how that works is basically, it's really simple. An amp hour is 1 DC amp over an hour. When you look at batteries, they'll all have an amp hour rating on it. It'll be a number with an AH. That's how many amp hours the battery is designed to provide. So when it comes to sizing your battery, basically you take your DC amps times your hours times how much you want to use it. So in the case of my Cpap, 8 hours a night, let's call it 10, easier math, a little bit of buffer room, then you'd be looking at 10 amp hours a day that you're going to use. So some of the power options that you can look at, what I've used previously is one of those Moto Master power packs. It's designed for jump starting your car. I think those are about 35. I've generally gotten like one night and then maybe a half a night out of it. They're designed more for starting power. Next would be like a Group 24 Deep Cycle Marine battery. Those are in general about 75 amp hours. And then the other thing I'm considering right now is getting 2 6-volt golf cart batteries and wiring them together, which would provide you about 200 amp hours. So if we use the math now, we have 10 amp hours a day we're going to use. And well, I should say first that you don't want to drain your battery below 50%. If you drain it below 50% regularly or let it die all the way, you will damage it and you won't get as many recharges out of it before it dies. So if we take that number, say 75, and we divide it by 2 for the 50%, we'll be looking at about 37 amp hours. So using the 10 hours a day we're going to consume, that would mean you're getting 3 to 4 days, closer to 4 days. And then if we take the golf cart, 200 times 50% is 100 divided by 10, you'd be looking at about 10 days for that. So I think that's probably closer to what I'm looking at. The next thing that I need to figure out, this is actually going to be a battery bank I'll put in my RV, is to figure out what sort of the parasitic draw is of other things in my RV. Obviously you have LEDs and there's a little bit of power used to start the propane appliances and things like that. So I'll be estimating that next. Yeah, I think that's about everything. The last thing I would say is something to consider is picking up a DC charger. I know I ordered one on Amazon. I just don't have it yet. Those are ones that go into the little cigarette lighter plug in your car. Um, Converting from battery power, which is DC power, into AC power requires using something called an inverter, and there is going to be a little bit of power loss in doing that. How much, I don't really know. I'm not an expert in that kind of a thing, but I've heard estimates as high as about 10%. So if that's true, it's quite a big difference. So by being able to plug it into the DC power, you're gonna save yourself quite a bit. So that concludes our video.